Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Bree if you are new here, and happy Ehlers Danlos Awareness Month. Last year I did a video for EDS Awareness Month that was more focused on the subtypes and the prevalence and diagnosis and treatment and the science part of the whole thing. But this year I thought that I would do something a little bit more relaxed, a little bit less research-based, and just talk about how EDS impacts my life, my day-to-day with EDS, what I experience with EDS and its super fun and fabulous comorbidities. So if you guys want to hang out while I do some makeup and chat about EDS, then just keep on watching. So I'm not going to be talking about the makeup at all in today's video, so if you guys are also interested in the products that I'm using, I will have them listed and linked down below, just, in case you're curious. But while I'm going to be doing my makeup, so that I have something to do with my hands, and also so that I am getting ready for the day, this video is not going to be about the makeup at all. So I was diagnosed with hypermobile Ehlers Danlos Syndrome at the very end of 2022. A big year of diagnoses for me, if you guys are familiar with my channel. But I was diagnosed with HEDS at the end of 2022. I had been experiencing the effects of EDS for a very long time before that, but it took a very long time to find a doctor that would actually listen to me, and it honestly took a long time for me to develop the advocacy skills to be able to get myself the diagnosis. Here's the thing, okay? And I have a feeling that this is probably the case for a lot of later diagnosed EDSers, is I'm almost positive that my mom has EDS as well. I'm almost positive that my grandma has EDS as well. But in the same breath, I grew up in the 90s. I was born in 91. I grew up before the internet was a thing. The internet became a thing when I was a kid and a teen. So the resources that are available now were not available when I was a kid, obviously. So there was a lot of things from when I was a kid that were brushed off as either being normal or maybe not normal, but I don't know, they hadn't actively harmed me and I wasn't struggling, so nothing was really that sounds so bad, but for example, I was super fucking flexible as a kid and I was hypermobile as a kid. I was, back in the day, double jointed, and I had my little party tricks that I would either show off to kids at school or, I would show off to my family. I'm not going to talk about the party tricks because I don't want anyone to try to do the things that I used to be able to do. Most of them I can't do now. 20 years later, I can't do them now. Maybe I could, but I'm also not going to fuck around and find out because I don't want to hurt myself. Because that's the, unfortunate problem here, is that I was hurting myself when I was doing those party tricks, I mean, it goes all the way back to literally when I was born. I was born with pectus excavatum, which means my chest wall is sunken in. It's not super drastic. It's not it doesn't affect my breathing or anything like that. It's honestly not even noticeable now as an adult, because, puberty, but it was noticeable on me as a child, and my mom has since told me that the day that I was born, the doctors were like, well, do you want us to crack her chest open? And my mom was like, absolutely not, she's fine. Which I'm sure my mom was just like, is this gonna affect her, blah blah blah. But also, you don't ask a postpartum by like 30 whole minutes, brand new mother, like, hey, do you want us to go crack your freshly newborn baby's chest open? Like, just saying. I have always had pectus excavatum, PE. And like I said, it never has caused me any issues. I breathe just fine. I do have chronic costochondritis or inflammation, like in my joints, but my mom also has that and she doesn't have PE, so I think that's more of a rib issue. I'm sure the PE probably doesn't help the matter, but like basically where I'm going with that is like I've always had signs, things that were overlooked because it wasn't until more recently, probably in the 2010s, that EDS became a more commonly talked about issue. I think I had really bad growing pains growing up. I just had a lot of problems. Honestly, it's kind of one of those things that's like, I was so used to a lot of those issues being my normal, or even necessarily my family's normal when I was a kid, that I didn't think twice about any of it. But once I was diagnosed, I was able to look back on a lot of those things that I dealt with and go like, oh yeah, no, that was that was EDS, wasn't it? Or that was, POTS or whatever. But like overall, it didn't really impact my life until I was in my 20s. I had some issues when I was in school, which in hindsight were definitely a little bit more related to like POTS. But even then, like, it wasn't something that I like really drastically adjusted my life over. My first like real job out of school, not counting, like work experience jobs and shit in high school, but like my first real job was working at a department store, Kohl's specifically. And I pretty quickly became like a department lead at Kohl's. And so with that, I was there full time. I was in the women's clothing department and also like the juniors clothing department. So I was constantly lifting, I was constantly moving, I was constantly carrying around just like armfuls of go-backs clothing on hangers from the fitting room. I was constantly moving. And I definitely noticed when I first started working there that I would be in like a significant amount of pain when I got off at the end of the day. But I also just kind of wrote it off as like, I don't work out. I'm moving so fucking much. And it's just the price you pay. Now again, I grew up with a mom who, if she worked in a particularly busy shift or a particularly long shift, she would talk about how bad her legs hurt. She would talk about how bad, her back hurt or whatever. And obviously there is some level of, body pain that comes with working particularly taxing shifts, of course, for everybody. But I grew up with that concept of pain being very normalized to me. Same with the chronic chest pain. The chronic chest pain was actually the first thing that I started like truly experiencing. And the chronic chest pain too, like I went to the doctors and urgent care so many times for it, because as much as it was normalized in my head, there is still something very off-putting about like shooty stabby pains in your chest. Like it doesn't matter how much that this is exactly what your mom experiences on a day-to-day basis. Like it's still pretty fucking nerve-wracking to just like experience shooty stabby pains in your chest. So like I said, the chest pain was the first like chronic thing that I was experiencing, and that was actually a couple years after I like started that job at Kohl's. I actually worked there for little over 2 years, left because management and I were beefing, left for what I thought would be greener pastures, was a much more slower paced retail job where in hindsight I likely deconditioned probably quite a bit at that job. And then I actually ended up going back to Kohl's, but a different Kohl's, because those greener pastures were not in fact greener. And well, frankly, I knew that I could get rehired back at Kohl's because I was very well trained and I was honestly extremely good at my job. As much as I hated the culture and the company and a lot of that, I still, like, I was good at my job. So, but like I said, when I left Kohl's the first time, I more than likely deconditioned probably quite a bit. And it was when I went back to Kohl's and I wasn't working the floor anymore. I was actually working fulfillment in the back and like packing shipment orders and stuff like that, that I more than likely probably agitated some shit going on. And it was like literally right when I started working there again, I started experiencing like the pretty severe leg pains at the end of the night and, like I said, the chest pain. But it was pretty much just tied to those two things. And then I left Kohl's again for more greener pastures, which those pastures were actually kind of actually greener for a little while and then they weren't. The next job that I had was a warehouse job. And my portion, it was like for one of those like the people fill out their like style profile, and you as the stylist go and, you know, pick out clothes for them and you ship it to them, which, you know, I really thought that was gonna be a good fit for me because of the whole like fashion design degree, and I was like, oh, I like have knowledge in this, you know. I mean, it was fine, but the company itself was ass, but that, I digress there. So a lot of my time spent at that job was standing at a desk that came up to probably about my belly button. It was a pretty tall desk actually, but I'm also pretty tall, but it came up to like my belly button, and I would spend my time reading through the person's profile and then going and picking their clothes, which like was not a very big warehouse, so it wasn't really a super big like to do. And then I'd have to go back to that desk and we had to handwrite notes for these people and be like, oh my God, pair the pants with, you know, whatever, right? So a lot of my time was spent at this desk looking straight down like this, just constantly looking down. And the funny thing is like I can think back to being at that job, and I was doing crazy shit. Like I would have my, say this is your leg, right? I would have my, I know I said I wasn't gonna show party tricks, but like this desk was pretty fucking tall, right? And I would have my leg like bent up over the desk, on top of the desk, and I'd be bent over my hips writing these notes. I was like stacking boxes up so that the you know, the paper that I was writing on, the card that I was writing on was significantly closer to my head so that I wasn't looking like straight down. I'd be like folded over the table, like writing like this so that I was much closer to the desk. Like I tried to do everything to try to like accommodate myself, but with that came a whole new experience of just chronic, absolutely debilitating neck pain because I was consistently hyperextending my neck. A couple months after I started that job, actually no, it was like almost a year after I started that job, my husband, then boyfriend, and I went back to New York, and we actually drove back, which was a delightful experience. However, cars for long periods of time is like very hard on the body. Like, very, very hard on the body. My neck was so flared up after that, like so flared up after that. That neck pain, which is, I have the same neck pain. I've had the same neck pain for now, what is it, 2024, 8 years now. No, 8 or 9 years now. The chest pain I've had for well over a decade. The neck pain got so bad and it was causing me, I can't say the word. Basically, it was causing me to have like migraines and like vertigo because it was just, everything was so inflamed in here that I actually had to start going to physical therapy. And I was referred into physical therapy without a diagnosis. Everyone just thought that it was because I was looking down at work for so long. I would get the, oh, you just look at your phone too much, you just sit at a computer too much, you know, all of these excuses, no diagnoses. So I went to physical therapy. I honestly would love to reach out to that physical therapist and see if I could get my hands on my records, because it's not through Kaiser, which I have Kaiser now, it's not through Kaiser. So I would love to get my hands on their records, because I know that they did like the hypermobility, like range of motion tests, and I would love to see what I scored back then versus what I scored when I started PT a couple years ago. Regardless, did PT. It was one of those things that's like, it helped me while I was actively doing it, but at no point did it stay helping me. The majority of what helped me at the time was I would get per session massages. They would put a TENS unit on me and then also put hot on me, like a hot wrap on me while I was doing the TENS unit, and it would like electrocute me. I miss that so much. That was like hands down probably the best I had felt in years, and it never lasted. Unfortunately, I'd always be back in pain by the time I was back in PT again. I wonder why. We weren't actually solving the problem. So, because there is no solving to the problem. But yeah, that was the first time that I went into PT. So, like I said, that physical therapy didn't really have any long-term effects on me for what I now know to be obvious reasons, because if you don't stick with it pretty much indefinitely with an EDS body, or learn the tricks and then like continue time in like the gym, it's not gonna make much of a difference. That business actually ended up closing, not my physical therapist, my job. That business actually ended up closing, and that was around the time that I ended up working at my parents' for the first time, which, I mean, I had been working there on and off over the years, but like that was like, I think the first time that I traditionally went there for an extended period of time. It didn't last long. I actually ended up back at Kohl's again. We're not going to talk about it. We are not going to talk about the fact that I worked there 3 separate times. But I did go back to Kohl's, the original Kohl's that I actually worked at, ironically enough. Mostly just because my mom didn't have the payroll at the time to hire me on with the amount of money that I needed to survive. So I went back to Kohl's, and I very quickly became the department lead for the home and kids departments. So if I thought that I was lifting a lot working in the clothing department, home goods is heavy. Now, don't get me wrong, there was definitely some areas of the department that I just, like, I straight up could not. And I'd have to call on my co-workers to be like, hey, can you come help me lift this or whatever, because I just, like, I straight up could not. But I had deconditioned so much while working the warehouse job because I wasn't really moving around a ton. Starting back at Kohl's again was like an extremely painful experience for me. My legs hurt constantly. My like chest would hurt from lifting. I was just like, my neck would hurt, but like I was just in so much pain. But the thing is that over time I rebuilt up those muscles because I was still like, there was no way around it. I still had to do my job. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. So, you know, I just kind of figured like it's normal. It's what my mom deals with, so it must be normal kind of thing. Why are you not? Thank you. But like I said, over time, like I rebuilt up those muscles that I didn't have, that I had lost, and it started to get a little bit easier. I was still having bouts of like severe pain. More than likely, I was probably overworking a joint or unknowingly subluxing a joint and basically just causing everything to flare up without my knowledge. And like, I'm gonna be honest, that period of time working like in the home department at Kohl's, and also that period of time working like honestly, any time that I was working at Kohl's, because I was the most like, I was moving my body and using my body the most, and like really, really building up muscles. That was probably, outside of obviously being a kid, was probably the best that I felt. In the tail end of 2018, very beginning of 2019, I can't remember, I left Kohl's again. My mom was pretty severely down employees. One of the employees that she had was actually my best friend's husband, and they were moving across the country. And here's the thing, like and my husband already worked there at this point, and like when you are family run, the vibes matter extensively for who's working with you. Like you want people that vibe with you, and it's hard to match the vibes with a stranger to that of like friends and family, you know? My best friend's husband was leaving. Well, they were all leaving, but he was leaving the job. And I was getting increasingly more and more frustrated with how I was being treated as just like an employee at Kohl's by my supervisor. Wouldn't you know, it was the same supervisor that I was having issues with the first time that I worked at that store, of course. I sat down and I did the math, and I basically just kind of had that come to Jesus moment where I was just like, why am I working somewhere else for the same amount of pay that I would be making working for my parents, where I also would get free food? And I won't get like gaslit and yelled at if I need time off, you know? And by that point, yes, I felt good working those jobs, but like I still had days where I was in more pain than normal, like a normal person would be. And I still had days where like I was struggling. And my mom was obviously very empathetic towards it because she experienced it herself. And it's a lot easier to work for someone who gets that and is willing to work with you on certain things, or isn't gonna get mad at you if you're like, I can't do X, Y, and Z right now because I'm, struggling a lot. And, at this point, I did not have EDS on my radar at all. I didn't really have anything on my radar when it came to like what was going on with my body. Again, I think I had just normalized it so much because A, I had dealt with it for so long, and B, my mom had dealt with it for even longer, that I was just like, oh, like, either this is how everyone feels constantly but nobody talks about it, or this is just like a family thing. Because my grandma also struggles with a whole lot of chronic pain. So I was like, either this is how everybody feels constantly and just no one talks about it, or this is like a family thing and this is just my normal. But like, I had been to the doctors for my chest pain. I had been to the doctors for my neck pain, both separately. And I was just given, it's chronic costochondritis. There really is no cause for it. There's nothing to help it. It could be from the pectus excavatum. It, could be from this. It could be from, lifting something. You irritate it. You just gotta rest it. It'll go away. Oh, you're just looking at your phone too much. Oh, you're looking down too much. That's why your neck is bothering you. So I was never given answers as to why I felt the way that I did. So it wasn't like I was sitting down and like researching anything, you know? So in 2019-ish, beginning of 2019-ish, I started working for my parents, and that has been the job that I've had since then. And wouldn't you know it, that the longer that I was working there, because I wasn't moving around nearly as much as before, that I deconditioned again. This time I ended up with, you know, my neck pain coming back very significantly. But again, it was my normal and it was just what it was. And so I just kind of dealt with it. Lots of massages from my husband and, you know, taking anti-inflammatories and just dealing with it. It got significantly worse during the pandemic because obviously I was doing even less and simultaneously doing more. And what I mean by that is I was doing less because I was on partial unemployment, so there was significantly more downtime. I was home significantly more, but I was also doing more in the sense that when I was at work, I was alone a lot more often. So because we just didn't have the payroll, because we weren't doing the business that we had been before, so it was a lot of like one of us working by ourselves kind of thing. And so in turn, I was doing a lot more on a per customer basis that I wasn't doing before. It's hot as shit in here. The lighting's a little different and you're probably gonna hear a lot more outside noises. It's extremely hot in here, so I had to open the window. So it was actually during the pandemic that I started learning a little bit more about EDS. And actually what triggered that was my best friend and her family, her little family, were moving back to California, and she had come to visit with her then 3-year-old daughter right before they were moving back. And we, as a collective unit, because that's my little niece, that's my child, we as a collective unit agreed that it would just be easier when they come to move back, because obviously they have to drive back with all of their stuff, to leave her daughter here. And with that, obviously, like, she was staying with her grandparents, but her grandparents had jobs and, you know, things to do and lives to live, and it's not necessarily always things that you can take a 3-year-old with you. So they were going to be gone for a week and a half, 2 weeks before they moved back. Enough time to pack up and then drive across the country, right? So my mom and I teamed up with my best friend's parents, and we, as a collective unit, took care of the child for them. It was a lot of me and my mom having her during the day, and then I would take her back to her grandparents' house. And it was mostly me having her during the day, but I would take her to my parents so that if I needed help with whatever, I had the help, you know? And so I went from picking her up all the time as a baby to not living anywhere near her, and then a whole pandemic happening. So I didn't see her for well over a year. And you know how big toddlers, or how fast toddlers grow. Like, the difference between her being she moved in 2019, so almost 2 years, and I saw them once or twice in the middle of that, aside from when obviously they came right before they were moving back. But going from picking her up all the time when she was below 1 year old to basically being her main daytime caretaker, and she was over 3. There's a big size difference between not quite 1 and just turned 3. Like, big size difference, you know? And I was so deconditioned from the pandemic and just not working a ton and sitting a lot and just like not doing a lot, that when I was taking care of my niece, I was having probably the worst flares I have ever had. I like still to this day, my worst has never been that bad. I remember like every night coming home and just laying in bed next to my husband and just sobbing because I was in so much pain and there was so much inflammation in like my traps up into my neck that I was just dizzy, constantly dizzy, because it was just, you know, whether it was a nerve thing or it was like pinching off blood, I don't know, but like it was so bad. And I was struggling so much that I finally started going like, this can't be normal. Like, people don't feel like this on a day-to-day basis. Like, I'm married to someone who does not feel like this on a day-to-day basis. Like, there is something wrong with me. Like, there is something different about me, you know? So I started researching and I came across EDS. And it was like the more and more and more I read about it, the more it made sense. Different things, like different, you know, signs you have EDS. And don't get me wrong, I get that so many of those are bullshit. And so many of them are just like kind of tangentially related. But even like the diagnostic criteria for it, I was like, obviously aside from like the actual like blood tests and stuff like that, but there was so much in the diagnostic criteria that I was just like, oh, this makes so much sense to me. This makes so much sense. So I kept researching and like that was 2021. In the summer of 2021, I went to the doctors and I was just like, hey, like I have this, you know, neck thing, blah, blah, blah. Like, can we take a look at it? Can like we figure it out? Because like this is impacting my day-to-day life. Like this is impacting how I am functioning on a day-to-day basis, right? So, and I had brought up the chest pain as well. So she did full like neck and chest x-rays to make sure that everything was, I don't know, in working order, I guess. I was told that I look at my phone too much. That's why my neck hurt. Because that makes so much sense when my more recent issues were stemming from picking a child up. The only thing that she had to say was, did you know that you have pectus excavatum? And I was like, yeah, fam, born in this body. Like, I was in fact aware of this, that my chest wall goes wee. So, got nowhere. Wasn't even given like the opportunity to do, or no, she did refer me into physical therapy, but it was 2021 and physical therapy was virtual. And I tried one appointment and it wasn't even virtual on camera. It was over the fucking phone. And they wanted me to do the range of motion, like initial assessment on myself. And it was the most bullshit thing I had ever done. And I was like, okay, well, fuck it. I'm not dealing with this right now. I will deal with it when I, you know, it's not a fucking pandemic. So I just kind of, you know, dealt with the vibes as one does when they're gaslit and told that there's nothing wrong with them and they just look at their phone too much for about a year. In 2022, my husband and I both got COVID. It was the first time of us getting COVID. And I firmly believe COVID like attacks what's already wrong with your body, because my husband has always had a bad stomach. Like he's always had stomach problems, and he was like getting violently sick from COVID while I was in like excruciating leg pain and like joint pain as a whole. Like I kind of had an inkling that was how I was going to feel, because when I got my second COVID vaccine, I was laid up for like a full 24 hours with like severe fucking joint pain. But it came and went super quickly, obviously, because it was my body just having an immune response. When I got actual COVID, I was in severe joint pain for days. My heart was racing every time I stood up. And that was the first time that I actually noticed it. In hindsight, I have had symptoms of POTS for a long time. It was just, I think I was so used to the sensation, and I don't think it was as bad, that I didn't really notice it. But it was when I got COVID that I started to really like take note of, oh shit, like my heart's racing a lot, and you know, I'm constantly in joint pain. And so like I kind of was already teetering into like, I'm pretty fucking sure I have EDS, like I need to probably look into getting diagnosed with this, blah blah blah. And like I went from researching like what is EDS to how do you get diagnosed with EDS. So after I got COVID and then got over COVID, I decided to make an appointment for myself. Now, mind you, at this point, I had untreated OCD as well. So I was very convinced that like I was going to get extremely severe long COVID. I was going to get like blood clots and this and that, all from having COVID. After I got over COVID, I had made myself a doctor's appointment to like a couple weeks later to just basically make sure that everything was good, and like, you know, my lungs sounded good, because like I lost my sense of taste and smell when I had COVID as well. So I wanted to just, you know, do the right thing by my body and make sure that everything was in working order. However, before that happened, I obviously went back to work, and rather than easing myself into it, after having spent 2 full weeks doing fucking nothing, didn't leave my house, didn't do anything at all, after having spent 2 full weeks of that, I went back to work, and my husband and I went back on the same day, and arguably we both did the same thing. I just had a worse reaction to it, but I did not ease myself back into lifting and moving and working and all of that. And what I'm pretty sure happened is I pinched a nerve on my left side in like my shoulder neck area, and it, you know, my shoulder was kind of bothering me by the end of the workday, but like I was just like, okay, well, I haven't done shit for the past 2 weeks. I still am like, you know, pretty fatigued from having COVID and like getting over COVID. So yeah, like this is to be fucking expected, right? My husband had band practice that night, so I was home alone for the first time in 2 weeks. Didn't even really do anything, to be honest with you. I was just kind of like starting to get myself back in the groove of like, okay, content filming, and you know, what's my schedule gonna be, and blah blah blah. I was just kind of starting to, you know, get my ducks back in a row, just trying to enjoy a quiet evening alone, when kind of out of nowhere I started having like tingling sensations and like tingling across my face as well, which in hindsight was the first time that I was experiencing neuropathy. Because of course I was experiencing fucking neuropathy, you know? But take someone who just fucking had COVID, has untreated OCD, and is having, I was having legitimate physical sensations. Like my part of my face, the only way that I could describe it is like, you know, when you go to the dentist and you get Novocaine, and then a couple hours later it's starting to wear off, and it kind of feels like that tingly, your legs asleep kind of sensation. That's what it felt like in my face, unprovoked. I didn't like it. I texted my husband. Luckily, band practice was already almost over at this point, but band practice was like 30-40 minutes away from us. I texted my husband and I was like, hey, like, you know, call me when you're on your way home, like blah blah blah, call me when you're done with practice, whatever. And I then proceed to fucking spiral. I thought I was having a stroke. I thought that COVID caused me to have a blood clot, and I threw that blood clot, and I was having a stroke, and I was dying. I was pacing around the house, sobbing, on the phone with my husband, explaining this to him, and he goes, "You're pacing around the house?" And I go, "Yeah, of course I am. I'm panicking. I'm having a stroke." And he was like, "You're not having a stroke." Now, granted, he has had some family members who have had strokes, so he is familiar, you know? And he was like, dude, you're pacing around the house. You're talking to me without any issues. I was like doing the thing in the bathroom mirror where you're like making sure that your hand, one of your arms isn't dropping. I kept smiling at myself. You know, I was doing all the like, you know, checking things. I was being very compulsive in that moment. But my husband was like, dude, you are not having a stroke. Like, you're fine. I will be home soon. I'll stay on the phone with you until I get home. Like, you're gonna be okay. You know, it is probably just your normal shit, just impacting you in a new way. Super fun and fresh, right? So I took that information to my doctor when I had that appointment, like I want to say like a week or two later. I was like, hey, like this happened as well, and like I've never experienced that before, and it's kind of weird and blah blah blah. She didn't really give a fuck, to be honest with you. She did not give a fuck. She ordered some labs just to make sure that like my labs were good, and kind of just sent me on my way. And of course, wouldn't you know that my labs came back perfectly fine. Everything was delightful. I think I had like, my white blood cell count was like slightly off in one way or the other, but everyone was just like, yeah, that's because you just had COVID. Like, you're gonna have some weird antibody numbers and like infection numbers because you just had fucking COVID. So everything was fine. She was super dismissive of my symptoms, which obviously were like in the moment very, very scary symptoms. To have half of your face, or like a section of, it wasn't full half, it was like this section of my face go numb for the first time ever is like fucking scary, you know? Obviously I was okay, like I'm still here, but I didn't appreciate how like dismissed I felt, but I kind of just let it go. I just let it go. I had other fish to fry with treating my OCD at the time, you know? I was like, let me just get through what I need to get through. Now at this point, I was constantly in pain. I was subluxing joints, which is like a partial dislocation, significantly more often than I had been before. I was, for the first time, like truly experiencing POTS symptoms. My heart was racing. I was getting dizzy when I was standing up, like all of that kind of stuff, you know? I was talking to one of my, like I think it was my dietitian, about it. And she had actually just been through the diagnostic process herself. And so she kind of, you know, walked me through it and kind of was just like, this is what I think you should do, like do this, blah, blah, blah. So end of summer, early fall 2022, I make an appointment with a brand new doctor, a brand new primary care doctor, thinking, let me get some fresh eyes. Let me, you know, explain the situation. And I think where I fucked up with her specifically was that I went in saying I wanted to be evaluated for EDS. Now, should that have been a fuck up? No, it shouldn't have been. I should have been able to walk in and say, I would like to be evaluated for EDS, and a doctor should check their preconceived notions at the door and just do their job, you know? Like, for what it's worth, by the time I had made this appointment, I was at the point where I was subluxing my shoulders in my sleep. I would like fling my arms up and I would wake up with my arms up here, my shoulders not fully in place, and my hands were numb because I was restricting blood flow by having them not be in their proper home, you know? Because of that sensation of like jumping them back into where they belonged when I woke up in the morning, I then realized, and don't do this, if you have EDS or you suspect that you have EDS or you have hypermobility syndrome or you just, you know, suspecting of any of it, do not fucking do this. Do not do what I'm about to say. I can sublux my shoulders on command. And I realized because of that sensation of slipping them back into place when I was waking up in the morning, when I would like, I used to do it to gross out my husband without realizing what I was doing. I would be laying on him and I could just thud it in and out of place. Don't do that. Don't. That's so bad for you. and I wonder why I'm struggling so much, you know? You're waking up in the morning with your fucking hands numb because your shoulders aren't properly in place. I kind of assumed that a doctor would take that seriously. Joke's on me. The funniest part is that, obviously you go into an appointment and a doctor takes the nurse takes your, blood pressure and blah, 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 and does all of that, and they take your heart rate, and my heart rate was like 120, 130, something like that, and they were like, suspicious, weird. It flagged in their system, and I kind of just tried to be like, hey, that's like normal for me. Like that feels normal to me. Like I don't feel bad. I don't feel like I'm gonna pass out. I don't feel anything. That feels normal to me. And I also had an echo, or not an echo, I had an EKG appointment that afternoon, like immediately after that doctor's appointment. So they kept being like, hey, like your heart rate. And I kept being like, I have an EKG immediately after this. If there's something wrong, they're gonna see it there. So like, can we focus on the things that I'm here for, So the doctor walks in and I start to, I guess, make my case. And she goes, well, everyone that I know that has EDS was diagnosed as a child. They wouldn't be diagnosed as an adult. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I've had these issues since I was a kid, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, this is getting worse. Like, and it's gotten worse since I had COVID and this and that. And she walks over and she just goes to my shoulder and she goes, your shoulder's not hypermobile. You go ahead and ask my geneticist and my physical therapist if they agree with that statement, because god damn was she wrong. My shoulders are hands down the most hypermobile part of my body. Like, to a scary extent. So, but I keep kind of trying to push. I'm trying to like advocate for myself in the best way that I can without being like mean about it, or like I'm telling the doctor how to do her job. I'm just trying to advocate for myself, And finally she goes, well, I guess I could refer you over to genetics, but you don't have EDS, like you're probably fine. And I was like, yeah, I'll take the genetics referral, like please. Mind you, they required me to recheck my heart about 4 times before I left. Only agreed because I was like, I'm literally about to be late for my EKG appointment, where once again they will see if there's anything wrong. And of course my heart rate got even worse when they were checking it after the doctor left, because I was fucking pissed because I just got gaslit and dismissed and she didn't give a fuck, So it was about 2-3 weeks after that appointment that I kind of like had this moment where I was like, hey, I never heard from genetics. And I just so happened to have an appointment with my dietitian that day. And I was like, can you see? Like, can you see that? Can you tell me? And she tells me that the doctor put in the referral, but on the referral told them not to call me. And she was like, you should call them yourself. So I called the genetics department myself. And I lovingly, in the sweetest way possible, girl bossed my way into an appointment with the genetics department without an actual doctor's referral. Basically, the genetics department wanted that primary to do the Beighton scale on me, and she refused. She straight up refused. So they were like, okay, well then we'll just go around her. Like, we'll just do it without the primary, So they started out with a phone appointment with the geneticist for me so that the geneticist could decide if it was worth me going and doing the blood work, if it was worth me coming in for a physical appointment to actually physically, check my body for like hypermobility and all the other things that were on the diagnostic criteria. I cried so hard when that appointment was done, and I thanked her so many times. She spent over an hour on the phone with me, just talking about my pain and my body and my physical symptoms and, my family history and all of these different things. And she just kept saying, even if this isn't EDS, what you're experiencing isn't normal and we need to figure it out. And I don't know why no doctor has wanted to spend the time to figure out what's wrong so that it can like get better. And I was like, that's all I want. I was like, I was at no point in time was I like dead set on like walking around being like, I have EDS before I spoke with a doctor. I wanted to rule it out. I wasn't, like convinced with it. I just wanted to take it off the playing field so that maybe I could start researching something else or trying to figure out something else. I don't see the harm in that. And realistically, the Beighton scale and the 2017 diagnostic criteria is not like an undue hardship for a doctor. It's not. It's really not that hard. It's pretty cut and dry, to be honest with you. Based on, some things that were discussed in that appointment, my geneticist was like, hey, like, I would like you to get the genetics testing done. Like, I think that it's worth you doing the connective tissue panel and seeing what's going on. I had, just based off of descriptions of my body, because she obviously was a phone appointment. She couldn't see me. Based off the descriptions of, my body, my symptoms, my family history, I was, at the time, throwing up flags for Marfan's. And I had some genetic, some family members that had some sketchy, unexplained deaths that kind of threw up some flags for VEDS. So she was like, yeah, I think that you should do the genetics testing. I'm also going to put in a referral for you for physical therapy. She walked me through exactly how to explain to the physical therapist what was going on. She was like, you want to make sure they do this, you want to make sure they say that, you want to make sure they're not the type of person that says like no pain, no gain, you want to do this. Like, she was the fucking best. She is the fucking best. So I went and I got my blood work done. I went and I started physical therapy, which I actually only did twice with that physical therapist because he definitely was like a no pain, no gain, and he did cause pain and there was no gain. I did the initial assessment appointment where we tested the range of motion. I think that I may have been his first hypermobile patient because I'm pretty sure I gave that man a heart attack. And I was laughing so hard the entire time because I was just like, wait, you're telling me this isn't normal? I always wondered why in movies the woman would be like, can you zip up my dress for me? I thought that was a flirty thing. I didn't think that there was legitimately people out there who couldn't zip up their own dresses. I didn't think that there was people out there who couldn't put lotion on their back, I didn't realize that none of this was normal. And I was laughing too because the whole time I kept hearing that primary care doctor being like, your shoulders aren't hypermobile, your shoulders aren't hypermobile. And meanwhile, this physical therapist is being like, I have never seen someone with as hypermobile shoulders as you. He goes, you shouldn't be able to do that. And he kept showing me where normal was, and I was like, leagues beyond it, So I thought it was hilarious. My physical therapist was fucking mortified, and I had never felt more validated in my entire life. Because I would do something and he'd be like, oh yeah, no, that's why you're in so much pain. That you're not supposed to be able to do that and stuff like that. So right before Thanksgiving 2022, I got the call back for my genetics testing, and it didn't have any of the known genetic markers for any of the connective tissue disorders, which obviously doesn't rule out hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos, but I didn't have any of I didn't have Marfan's or VEDS or classic or anything like that. And so my geneticist said on the phone, I obviously still haven't seen you in person, so I cannot clinically diagnose you with HEDS without seeing you and actually physically doing the Beighton scale on you. And I was like, no problem, friend, let's make an appointment. So shortly after Christmas 2022, I went in for that appointment, and again, was never more validated than I had ever experienced in my entire life. She is truly one of the best doctors I've ever had. And we went through the whole thing, and she was like, congratulations. It was super cute because the genetics department works out of the pediatric wing at one of the Kaisers by me. So after she was walking me out at the end of the appointment, she was like, "Do you want a sticker?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." And I actually still have that sticker in my car, in my center console, that it was a superhero sticker. It was a Batman sticker. So I am a superhero. And yeah. And my geneticist was like, "Hey, saw those heart rate reads from that last appointment that we had talked about, and think that you should go get evaluated for POTS." She explained POTS to me. She told me about the rates of comorbidity with EDS, and was just like, "I think that it would probably be a very good idea for you to go get evaluated for that as well. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to ask for, blah, blah, blah." That took me a while. Actually had a whole video that I did about that diagnostic process. I will have that listed up in the eye and down below for you guys. But I did eventually also get diagnosed with POTS. I don't have MCAS. I don't have any of the other comorbidities except for like neurodivergence, which is just, I don't know what to do with that knowledge that they're like comorbid or whatever. We'll wait and see. Honestly, like, getting diagnosed helped me immensely, just in the frame that I was able to accommodate myself. I did do physical therapy again with another lovely gentleman. Unfortunately, he retired, but physical therapy is just really fucking expensive, like so fucking expensive, that I haven't been able to do it. Unfortunately, I would love to get back into it and do it regularly, but I cannot afford it at all. Honestly, the biggest thing about getting diagnosed for me was that I was able to like accommodate myself and to understand the ways in which I need to accommodate myself. Like, say for example, on a day off, what I usually do is I will flip back and forth between cleaning, doing chores, stuff like that, and editing. So I will break my house up into rooms, and like I'll clean the bedroom, and then I'll go edit for a little while, and then I'll clean the bathroom, and then I'll go edit for a little while, and I go back and forth, and it gives me enough time moving around without it being too much, and then it gives me enough relaxing, resting time without it being too much. Unfortunately, my neck problems suck in the way that I can never truly have a rot in bed, rest all day kind of day. I will be in more pain than when I started out. I don't know the logic behind it, but it puts me in a significantly worse situation to lay around all day than it does for me to just kind of push through pain and slowly keep going and just like do some things, you know? So that's super fun. But yeah, I mean, like, I still have it. I'm always gonna have it. I'm hoping that with treating some of the other things that I have going on in my life, that I will be able to get into the gym, get lifting, get moving my body in a much more meaningful way, that I can build up strength. But I'm doing significantly better than I was, and a big part of that is because I have learned how to accommodate myself. I don't lift things that I can't lift. I don't push myself. I make sure that I move every single day. I have learned to delegate tasks a lot, in the sense that, like, this big bird. I've learned to delegate tasks a lot in the sense that, like, if I know that I'm kind of reaching my limit, I will ask someone else around me to do something for me. Just kind of generally learn the things that I can't do at all. Like, for example, the dumpster for our apartment, for like our building, the lids are always closed. I cannot lift the lid of that dumpster and fling trash in there, one-armed, because I gotta hold the lid up, without like a shoulder going with it, you know? I can't clean like the big mirrors in our apartment because it really, like, it will sublux my shoulder. My shoulders will go like, woo. So little things like that I've just kind of learned over time that like are not even worth me trying. There's a lot of stuff that I'll do that I probably shouldn't, because I haven't learned that I shouldn't do it yet. There's also still a lot of situations in which I'm just really honestly very stubborn, and I will do things that I shouldn't do because I want to or because I need to or whatever. But honestly, like, the biggest thing for me is just like having a name to the problems has made it so that I have an explanation, honestly, that I have a way to understand it. I can build community with it. I can get answers for things that I need, stuff like that. So that's my little EDS Awareness Month story, my kind of how I got to the point of getting diagnosed, and a little bit of how I'm doing now. I have talked on my channel for the past year and a half or so about, you know, my diagnostic journey and different things like that. I have it all in a playlist. I will have that playlist listed and linked down below for you guys. And yeah, comment down below and tell me about EDS. Tell me about your EDS. Tell me about your daily life. Just talk to me about it. It is EDS Awareness Month, so let's make more people aware. Please subscribe if you have not already. It would mean the world to me. Like this video, ring the bell, do all the things. I hope that you guys have an awesome day, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye!